Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 episode number 73 based on novel. So let's start. Hua Yuhao was choking a little on the baked bread because of his tears, and his sobbing instantly stopped and became some unnatural sounds. Wang Chua recovered and hurriedly squatted down beside him as she patted his back gently to help him get his breath back. It took some effort, but this mouthful finally went down. Hua Yuhao wiped the tears from his face as he lowered his head and said, "Thank you." Wang Chua reached out and snatched the remaining half from his hands. Hua Yuhao snapped back around at her with a look of astonishment and a little bit of anger, but he then realized that the girl was stuffing the entire piece of baked bread into her mouth as if she wanted to swallow it whole. Her tender and pretty cheeks instantly puffed out as she struggled to chew. Their gazes met once more, and Hua Yuhao laughed through his tears and sniffling as he watched her swallowing furiously. He handed her the water bag in his hands. It wasn't easy, but Wang Chua finally swallowed the baked bread in her mouth with the help of some water. Wang Chua took a deep breath, and she couldn't help but whisper, "It tastes terrible." Hua Yuhao chortled and said, "It's not so bad. It's not terrible to the point where it's inedible, at least." Wang Chua snapped, "I'm talking about your saliva." Hua Yuhao was stunned momentarily. Right. They had both taken turns to bite into this baked bread, and it could be said that they were swallowing each other's saliva. There was a little bit of awkwardness amongst all this, and he subconsciously turned to look at Wang Donga, who was still meditating, a feeling of guilt surging up from the bottom of his heart. Wang Chua grunted contemptuously and said, "Men who are afraid of women are good for nothing. You're a grown man now, and you're still sobbing and crying like that. That's even worse." She handed the water bag back to Hua Yuhao and stood up. Hua Yuhao didn't get angry at all as he put the water bag away. He didn't follow Wang Chua, but remained where he was. He made a mental note that had to maintain his distance from Wang Chua, and he couldn't let Wang Donga misunderstand. However, he swiftly raised his head at this moment. His eyes were still filled with tears, but they suddenly froze as he stared in one particular direction. His spiritual detection was initially working in an area around him, but he instantly switched to a particular direction in front of him. Wang Chua was also part of his spiritual detection, and she naturally gazed over at the first possible moment. Both of them felt their hearts skip a beat. The first feeling that Hua Yuhao's spiritual detection gave them was an aura that seemed to blanket the entire world. It didn't come from a single soul beast, it was from a group, and one that was charged with power. Pair after pair of dark red eyes glowed faintly in the darkness of the night, and their muscular bodies didn't make a sound at all as they traversed the forest. They were like specters of the night as they gradually moved closer. Hua Yuhao instantly warned everyone who was still cultivating with his spiritual detection. He didn't make a sound at all, and he made a gesture to Wang Chua to keep quiet at the same time. He still didn't know whether these soul beasts were coming after them, or if they were just passing by. These soul beasts were about 800 meters away, and they were gradually pushing forward. Everyone woke up one after another. They didn't need Hua Yuhao to tell them verbally, they could see the soul beasts that were coming closer through Hua Yuhao's spiritual detection. At this moment, the students from the inner courtyard displayed their exemplary qualities. Nobody made a sound as they swiftly started to move, and they relied on their geographical advantage to find a spot where they could best defend themselves. Zhong Lashuan came next to Hua Yuhao swiftly, her pretty eyes sparkling. She didn't look a single bit like she did when she was meditating. She made an inquisitive gesture toward Hua Yuhao, and Hua Yuhao responded with a subtle shake of his head to signal that he didn't know what these soul beasts were after. Zhong Lashuan waved her hands for everyone to maintain their formation. There were quite a few soul beasts in this pack, at least a few hundred. Soul beasts that lived in the hybrid region had at least 1,000 years of cultivation, and several hundred of them would be extremely difficult to deal with. Furthermore, Hua Yuhao's spiritual detection told him that there were more than just 1,000-year soul beasts among the pack they were facing. It was better not to provoke this pack if they could help it. The soul beasts didn't seem like they had discovered the company, and were just gradually moving towards the human's position. Zhong Lashuan's eyebrows knit together. She was a little conflicted at this moment. She felt like these soul beasts weren't coming after them, but the marks they would leave behind if they left this location now would definitely be discovered. However, they would definitely meet up with these soul beasts if they didn't move away. Such an enormous pack would undoubtedly assault them if they saw them. Zhong Lashuan glanced at Hua Yuhao subconsciously, but right at this moment, Hua Yuhao suddenly used his spiritual power to signal in everyone's minds, "Prepare for battle." Just when he gave out the signal, the soul beasts that seemed like they had no target all suddenly picked up speed, and split into two groups as they flanked the Shrek band from both sides. The 7 or 8 soul beasts that were charging at the front were the leanest and most robust ones. They were simply too quick. The forest's complicated landscape didn't seem to impede them at all. They separated and flanked, and it was obvious that these soul beasts had premeditated their battle strategy. They had clearly discovered the company way earlier, and treated them like prey. Zhong Lashuan growled softly, "Prepare for battle, everyone. Maintain the original formation. These soul beasts are very hard to handle, so everyone is to go straight for the kill. Give your all in this fight. Mo Xian, unleash your halo. Yes. Mo Xian acknowledged as 2 yellow, 2 purple, and 2 black soul rings rose up from his feet. In the next moment, halo after halo rippled from his body, enveloping everyone. Hua Yuhao could clearly feel that his strength and speed had been amplified in tandem, and his spiritual focus became a little stronger. Mo Xian had unleashed his first 3 halos, but the strength of his amplification couldn't really be complemented, as its effects couldn't even reach a fifth of Ning Qian's 7 treasures glazed pagoda. The soul beasts arrived right when Mo Xian activated his halos. The 7 or 8 burliest soul beasts were in the vanguard. Everyone could clearly see that the soul beasts were a bunch of baboons when they came nearer. They were huge and tall, and could even be compared to a normal bear species. Their muscles were tight and bulging, and their lean and mean appearance instilled a sense of fear in people's hearts. Their faces were ghastly white, in strong contrast to their black fur. Their blood-red eyes in their white faces were daunting, and this appearance was especially petrifying in the darkness of the night. These are bloody baboons. Be careful, everyone. Bloody baboons have powerful physical strength, and bloodlust is their innate skill. Bloodlust allows them to immediately boost their offensive and defensive capabilities. Their heads are their vital point, so everyone should go for their heads. Zhong Lushuan didn't panic at all as they faced this siege from a pack of high-level soul beasts. She rapidly gave the necessary commands while she released her martial soul at the same time. Hua Yuhao was standing behind her, and he could see 2 yellow, 2 purple, 3 black, and 1 red soul ring rise from beneath her feet. The pack of bloody baboons paused momentarily when her red soul ring appeared, as if they were a little hesitant. Bloody baboons were soul beasts that were extremely hard to deal with. They moved in packs, even as their individual fighting strength was also relatively formidable. They were known as beings who had bronze skin and steel bones. They had strong defensive capabilities, and they had immense strength powerful enough to strangle a tiger to death with their bare hands. They were highly resistant to soul power of any element, and their black fur, which was as tough as metal, was their best defensive trait. What was even more frightening was their innate skill, bloodlust. Once it was used, their defensive and offensive capabilities would be boosted exponentially, while they would lose the ability to feel pain and would no longer fear death. Bloody baboons were naturally cruel and fierce, and they were also very intelligent. They were clearly trying not to be discovered when they were coming forward slowly. Fortunately, Hua Yuhao could tell through his spiritual detection that their blood essences were changing, and he was able to warn everyone to get ready in advance. The tallest bloody baboon at the very front had a conspicuous lock of golden fur on its forehead. It howled into the sky, more than 3 meters tall when it stood up straight as it hammered its chest heavily with its fists, which it sounded like deafening drums. A circle of golden light radiated from its body, and the bloody baboons around him were covered with a pale golden layer. Their auras became even more fearsome than before, and the fear that had flashed across their eyes before vanished into thin air. Murderous looks exploded from their eyes as they snarled and charged forward. Zhong Lushuan lowered her voice and said, "That's the Baboon King. He's a 50,000-year soul beast. Be careful, everyone. This is mass berserk." Something glowed behind Zhong Lushuan's back as she spoke. It was a crescent moon that seemed like it was hanging off a tree as everything lit up after its appearance. Zhong Lushuan's skin looked pale and translucent under the moonlight. She pointed forward with her right hand, and moonlight immediately erupted from the crescent moon above her. The baboons that came forward first were immediately smashed away wherever the moonlight fell. However, the bloody baboons' defensive capabilities were boosted under the effects of mass berserk, and they just rolled around on the ground before they got back to their feet, mostly unharmed. The group from Shrek Academy had been surrounded at this moment. Large throngs of baboons leapt out from their surroundings, but they didn't come any closer, forming a tight and compact circle around the humans. The company could tell from their movements that these baboons had between 2,000 to 3,000 years of cultivation. The Baboon King was undoubtedly the strongest one, and there were several other 10,000-year baboons beside him. There were also several other 10,000-year baboons in the packs that had flanked them to either side. The Baboon King continued hammering his chest. His mass berserk continued to spread, and quickly encompassed all the baboons around him. However, the baboons were not hasty with their attack, and only pushed forward gradually. The air immediately became extremely tense. The students from Shrek weren't panicky or flustered in the least, even though they were facing such a hazardous situation. The Baboon King had 50,000 years of cultivation, which meant that he was almost equivalent to an 8-ringed Soul Doluor. The humans had 2 Soul Doluor on their side, and they even had Dean Cai, who was a titled Doluor, to hold the fort. These bloody baboons were difficult to deal with, but it wouldn't be easy for them to threaten their company. Han Ruoruo had shifted behind Zhong Lushuan at this moment. Her dazzling golden rope shimmered into view. However, she didn't attack her enemies, but wrapped the rope once around her companions' waists. A powerful control-type soul master didn't just control his or her enemies, but also had to take care of his or her own people. The baboon king stared at Zhong Lashuan with those ferocious eyes of his, while Zhong Lashuan returned his gaze with a calm expression. All of a sudden, the baboon king roared as he applied strength to his thick and strong lower limbs. His incredibly muscular body immediately barreled towards Zhong Lashuan, while a layer of golden light glimmered on his body. His tremendous forward-moving figure actually appeared faintly surreal and illusory. Zhong Lashuan's first and third soul rings lit up at the same time. A streak of moonlight first descended on her body, and she was completely encircled by the radiance, before another beam of moonlight shone on the baboon king's body immediately afterwards. There was a loud boom, and the baboon king's momentum paused, but he still continued his charge at Zhong Lashuan. The other baboons charged forward when the baboon king made his move, and the 10,000-year bloody baboons immediately launched their hysterical assault. Zhong Lashuan placed her hands in front of her chest. The crescent moon behind her burst with light as streak after streak of moonlight blasted down from the sky. She blocked the baboon king's forward momentum and 4 other 10,000-year baboons at the same time. Of course, she wasn't the only target, and enemies circled in from all sides. 2 of the 10,000-year baboons charged toward Hu Yuhao and the others. At this moment, Wang Donga was on Hu Yuhao's right, while Wang Chua was on his left, both of them having removed their veils for the night's rest. The 2 baboons leapt into the sky at the same time, and one of them went straight for Hu Yuhao. It placed its elongated hands above its head and clenched them into fists before slamming them straight down. Hu Yuhao was young, but he was an experienced fighter. Cold light flickered in his eyes as 4 soul rings rose from beneath him. His eyes instantly turned white as a white light circle spread in all directions. Mass enfeeblement. Hu Yuhao's mass enfeeblement was also like a halo, but it was far stronger than Mo Xian's halos. Almost all the bloody baboons slowed down in that instant, and the ferocity of their forward momentum was greatly reduced. The bloody baboons were adept with physical attacks, while mass enfeeblement targeted physical bodies, so it could be considered a counter. Mass berserk had just taken effect on these baboons, but its effects were immediately countered and offset by mass enfeeblement. Hu Yuhao was taking care of the whole battlefield, but he chose to advance instead of retreat as he slipped forward in a flash. His body slid just underneath the 10,000-year baboon's armpits as he slapped his right hand toward the other one. The bloody baboon's tactic of choice was to meet force with force. The baboon didn't even bother evading Hu Yuhao's attack as it swung its arms out and swept them towards Hu Yuhao. However, was Hu Yuhao's right hand that easy to fight against? When his right hand pressed against the baboon, the controlling crane-capturing dragon was immediately used. He didn't pull, but pushed instead, and he borrowed the baboon's own strength to bounce backwards rapidly. 5 streams of blood spurted out as that 10,000-year bloody baboon howled ferociously. A dark golden blade glimmered in Hu Yuhao's right hand. The foot-long blade had been buried entirely in the baboon's body. Its fur was tough, but it was still a far cry from Hu Yuhao's dark golden terror claw. Still, this baboon was truly fearsome. Its ribs were heinously injured, but it hadn't lost its ability to fight. It began to roar hysterically on the spot while a dense blood essence erupted from its body. It was about to enter bloodlust mode. Hu Yuhao had singled out one of the 2 10,000-year bloody baboons, so the other one naturally went for Wang Donga and Wang Chua. Wang Donga was focused on Hu Yuhao, and she immediately followed up after Hu Yuhao launched his attack. The radiant butterfly goddess wings stretched out behind her back as the voluminous light of the butterfly goddess burst forward. The light of the butterfly goddess wasn't weak, but it was definitely not strong enough to break through the bloody baboon's defenses. All it could do was hinder the baboon's forward movement. Wang Chua made her move at this moment. A crisp dragon roar could be heard as Wang Chua's body flared up with riveting and brilliant golden light. She arrived before the baboon in an instant. The baboon swung its fist at her without hesitation. A stunning scene occurred. Wang Chua was such a pretty little lady, but she didn't use any soul skills at this moment, choosing to meet force with force instead. Her small white fist clashed with the baboon's dustpan-sized fist in the air, just like that. Wang Chua's fist turned golden in an instant. Her eyes were incredibly determined and unwavering, and the bloody baboon actually halted in its tracks after colliding with her simple punch. Golden light burst out as a shrill cracking sound could be heard. That bloody baboon's arm arched backward in the instant after the collision, but only half of its arm moved. It had such a thick and tough arm, and yet it broke, just like that. The 10,000-year bloody baboon's forte was meeting force with force, and yet it actually lost the fight, and absolutely so. Wang Chua seemed to have expected this, and she didn't pause after launching her fist. She tapped on the ground with the tip of her foot, and her entire body was propelled forward with a boom, as if she were a golden cannon shell. The bloody baboon wanted to use bloodlust as it howled in agony, while extending the fingers of its other hand to make a grab at Wang Chua. Wang Chua's body was still in midair, but she didn't dodge or evade the attack, making the exact same grabbing action. Behind her, Wang Donga didn't even see how she did it. All she saw was Wang Chua grabbing one of the baboon's fingers. In the next moment, her forward-moving body suddenly plummeted toward the ground, and she touched down like a 500-kilogram sluice. Boom! An even more violent impact could be heard this time, and an intense shockwave erupted from where Wang Chua landed on the ground. She flipped over several other bloody baboons that were charging behind her. Afterwards, she was still grabbing onto that bloody baboon's finger as she hurled its 2-meter-tall, muscular, and lean body into the air. Yes, she hurled it into the air. Boom! The 10,000-year bloody baboon was slammed forcefully into the ground, the force of the impact knocking over 2 other baboons. Wang Chua released that finger, which was broken until it couldn't be broken any further, and she raised her right fist as 2 yellow, 2 purple, and 1 black soul rings rose from her body. Her first purple soul ring sparkled, and she punched out as a dragon head seemed to flash by in midair and integrate itself into this fist, and this fist rained down onto the bloody baboon's tough skull. Boom! The bloody baboon's head was driven directly into the ground. Its enormous body was still exuding blood energy as it suddenly stopped, and its legs curved upward before they crashed down heavily once more. The baboon was no longer moving. This, Wang Donga held herself in high regard, but even so, she couldn't help but draw in a cold breath as she watched. So violent. Wang Chua is just so violent. From beginning to end, Wang Chua had relied entirely upon her fearsome and ferocious strength to fight, but this seemingly simple brutality and fighting style actually killed a 10,000-year bloody baboon in such a short period of time. Hua Yuhao's fight was also ending on the other side. The bloody baboon had just unleashed bloodlust, but it couldn't really use it before it landed heavily onto its own kin. Hua Yuhao used spiritual confusion, and it hit the baboon right at the time when it had raised its bloodlust to the highest possible level. The 10,000-year bloody baboon was experiencing pain, hysteria, weakness, and bloodlust at the same time, and it finally went insane. It began to wave its fists around with all its strength like a windmill, and the first 2 targets were its partners beside it as it knocked them into the sky. It began to whirl its arms around even more crazily in the next moment. Hua Yuhao was a member of Shrek Academy, and he naturally had some knowledge about soul beasts in their bloodlust state. Soul beasts that were under the effects of bloodlust had their strength greatly amplified, but their intelligence would also be lowered to the minimum. That was the price of bloodlust. It was easy to imagine how soul beasts would react to spiritual confusion when they could no longer maintain their rationality and intelligence. It was easy to see that Hua Yuhao's mass enfeeblement and spiritual confusion were exceptionally effective against bloody baboons. Hua Yuhao didn't pursue his target as faint lights flickered. He was a control-type soul master, so his main role was to assert control over the entire battlefield and protect his companions at the same time, thus eventually achieving victory. He turned around after unleashing spiritual confusion, and he caught the scene where Wang Chua hurled the other bloody baboon into the sky and slammed it into the ground. Hua Yuhao's mouth opened so wide a duck egg could probably fit inside. Isn't this the girl that snatched the baked bread from me? This strength is a little too terrifying. Hua Yuhao's strength was relatively formidable, but he knew that he could not reach that level of brutality and explosiveness. But she had managed to do it. The golden dragon truly lived up to its name as the ancestor of strength. Furthermore, her strength seemed to be even higher than his previous speculations. Faced with this fearsome draconic prestige, the savage bloody baboons seemed a little afraid to come forward. They were very successful on this side, but there weren't many problems on the other side either. Under the light of the moon, Li Yongyue's moonblade demonstrated the great offensive strength that an agility-type soul master should possess. Han Ruoruo had been observing everything. After seeing that things were fine on Hua Yuhao's side, she turned her attention to the other side. As she unleashed her dazzling golden rope, the strongest few baboons were sent flying away. Only the weaker ones were left behind, but they were still tangled and restrained by the rope. Li Yongyue's only job was to kill them. At the front, the strongest 5 or 6 baboons couldn't inch any closer as they were facing the bright moon in the sky. They roared furiously, but were helpless. Zhong Lushuan was calm from the very start. She was also observing everything. Dean Cai was missing at this point. Her whereabouts were unknown. But even though she didn't fight, she was the backbone. Everyone was confident that she was around. At this point, a large number of baboons were rushing toward them from all directions. Although they were entrenched atop the slope, it wasn't a 1-versus-1 duel anymore. The pressure on them increased greatly, and Han Ruoruo's immense fighting strength was demonstrated. This time, Han Ruoruo was Hua Yuhao and Wang Dong's team member. It was also because of her presence that there was a sudden change in the soaring pressure. Han Ruoruo pointed up, and her dazzling golden rope shot into the sky, forming a golden halo in the air before it abruptly descended. As the halo descended, no one felt any threat from it. When it finally landed, 4 baboons were caught within it. The rest of the baboons, including the bloody baboon king, were located outside of the halo. The baboon king had been struck by Zhong Lushuan earlier, and blasted out of the region of the halo. In the next instant, the bright golden halo blew apart and unleashed an immense explosive force. This explosive force didn't possess tremendous destructive abilities. However, its impact was great. Countless baboons were sent flying, and they knocked down the rest of the baboons that were rushing up the slope. Only the 4 baboons within the halo remained there. The rest of the area was temporarily cleared of baboons. Everyone else was highly skilled, so they wouldn't let such a great opportunity slip. Zhong Lushuan's 5th soul ring shone brightly, and the crescent in the sky turned golden. Instantly, this crescent started to divide and form equally huge crescents that eventually streaked down. Moonfall. The golden-yellow crescents turned into reapers' scythes. 2 baboons in the 10,000-year level were chopped in half as the moonlight crossed them. They didn't even have a chance to unleash their bloodlust. Zhong Lushuan wasn't the only one who attacked. Li Yongyu also leapt up and gestured towards the crescents above Zhong Lushuan. Suddenly, the surface of his moonblade was covered in a layer of golden light. No one saw him using any soul skills. His figure only flashed by his target as his moonblade displayed countless forms. In the next instant, 1 baboon froze in place, and several fresh wounds appeared on its body before it collapsed to the ground. The 4th baboon was taken down by Wang Chua's fist. The fight was simpler this time. After the golden halo toppled the other baboons, the dazzling golden rope tangled that baboon. As Wang Chua turned around, she jumped into the air, and her body was covered by a dim golden light as she punched half the baboon's body into the ground with her landing. It was unlikely to be alive after the blow. Hu Yuhao and Wang Donga became bystanders as these few exchanges occurred. The 2 of them had reunited at this point. As they held hands, the Haodong power circulated and brought them to their strongest state. Wang Chua is very strong. Hu Yuhao whispered. Wang Donga nodded and replied, she's too wild. Turns out she's one violent lady. Hu Yuhao grinned without speaking. He had a deeper impression of Wang Chua eating a baked biscuit. An orange-gold light flashed, and the snow lady came out of Hu Yuhao's body. Her deep blue eyes blinked as she watched the baboons reorganizing. After that, she turned to Hu Yuhao. Hu Yuhao and Wang Donga only interacted briefly before they started to attack. They moved up to the baboon that was pushed into the ground by Wang Chua, and Hu Yuhao pressed his left hand on its body. Wang Donga wasn't idling either. With the support of their Haodong power, both of them were surging with soul power. Wang Donga was a 6-ringed soul emperor, and her cultivation was 1 level above Li Yongyu, Wang Chua, and Mo Xian. Her 4th soul ring lit up, and her 2 hands pointed forward successively. Hexagram arrays started to rapidly appear on the ground. These hexagram arrays were lined up in a specific way. Each array was 5 meters from the next array, but their colors were varied. Apart from one at the front that was golden, the rest flashed before disappearing. Hexagram arrays were very restrictive, but only one could be used at a time. However, there was a technique in unleashing this soul skill. Although only one hexagram array could be used at a time, the position of multiple arrays could be set up beforehand. There wasn't such a need for such a setup in a duel. However, she could set up multiple arrays according to the geographical conditions if they were encircled. The Baboon King had a 50,000-year cultivation. Seeing his own tribe members being massacred, he didn't command them to rush up the slope. Instead, he roared furiously, and continued to unleash his mass berserk in a bid to neutralize Hu Yuhao's mass enfeeblement. Following this, he roared 3 more times. Suddenly, the bloody baboons started to cry out, and thick blood fog was released from their bodies. All the baboons were in a bloodlust state now. Even Zhong Lushuan's expression turned serious at this point. It was very difficult to deal with these baboons in their bloodlust state. Zhong Lushuan turned and asked Hu Yuhao, "Yuhao, can your domain avoid harming those on your side?" Hu Yuhao shook his head and replied, "No. I can only prevent everyone from being attacked, but the low temperature is unavoidable. Eldest senior sister, why don't Wang Dong and I charge ahead? I don't think it's too dangerous if we use my domain." No, Zhong Lushuan rejected his proposition. He had to be joking. She was supposed to protect Hu Yuhao on this mission. How could she let him subject himself to danger? Han Ruoruo said, "Then let's stick to the original plan. Lushuan, we won't hold back anymore if we really have no choice." Zhong Lushuan nodded slightly. Her 8 soul rings shone, and a dim silvery fog rose from her feet. Her body was covered by the fog, but she appeared indistinctly beautiful at this moment. This was Hu Yuhao was shocked. Zhong Lushuan wasn't using any soul skills now, but what was this silvery fog she had released? Through his spiritual detection, he could clearly sense Zhong Lushuan's soul power and aura rising rapidly under the effect of the fog. It felt as if she was accumulating her strength. The crescent above her head grew larger and larger, and started to expand into a full moon. Zhong Lushuan's eyes also shone with silver light at this point. Wang Donga said softly, "Eldest senior sister seems to be using a secret technique to ignite her own strength. It feels similar to the baboon's bloodlust, only without the mania. If her soul power can be likened to water, then it must be boiling right now." Wang Donga's explanation was very apt, and Hu Yuhao agreed with her assessment. However, this was evidently not the time to be bothered about this. Hu Yuhao didn't hold back any further as he faced these strong enemies. A dim golden streak of light shone from his forehead. Following this, a weird golden vertical eye slowly opened. When his eye opened, all the surrounding lights seemed to turn dark. Everyone, including the baboons, turned their attention to Hua Yuhao. Third eye. He actually has a third eye. Wang Chua was also looking at Hua Yuhao at this point. She wasn't stunned, but showed a peculiar look instead. She could clearly sense his aura soaring. In terms of scale, he wasn't weaker than Zhong Lashuan, eldest senior sister. We have to capture the king if we want to take all of them down. I'll help you control the baboon king. Senior Han, you can control the entire battlefield. Hua Yuhao pulled Wang Donga to him and came beside Zhong Lashuan. Zhong Lashuan didn't say anything, and only nodded at him. At this point, the Congress of Baboons started to exhibit their bloodlust state. The baboons started to grow larger. A layer of dark red light had appeared over their pitch-black hair. A thick, fishy smell spread out in a nauseating miasma. Their eyes seemed to be dancing with blood-red light. Instantly, the surrounding trees were layered with a dark red color that exuded a dangerous aura. The bloody baboon king roared into the sky. It straightened its body and lifted its thick arms up high. Suddenly, its figure ballooned in size, and every inch of its muscles bulked up massively as its huge fangs grew in length. Even the surrounding air started shaking. The baboon king seemed to have gone mad too. Although it was unable to charge forward as quickly as before, it still advanced with solid steps. As it moved forward, it destroyed a streak of moonlight every time it waved its fist. Even when the streaks of moonlight struck it, they only reduced its speed, and couldn't force it back. At this point, all the bloody baboons in the bloodlust state started to attack all out. Their speed, strength, offense, and defense were all greatly enhanced by their bloodlust state, and they all rushed up the slope. Han Ruoruo was undoubtedly the one under the greatest pressure. Her golden halo was put to use again. However, it couldn't topple the baboons like before. The baboons could only be pushed back slightly. Following that, more and more baboons continued to rush up the slope. Wang Chua's performance was the most eye-catching. The baboon's bloodlust didn't seem to have any effect on her. Her fighting style was also very uncouth and violent. Her body was completely engulfed by golden light. As dragon roars echoed, every baboon that collided with her was flung into the air. She guarded her area so well that it was seemingly impregnable. Not far from her was the baboon corpse that Hua Yuhao had previously grabbed with his left hand. Wang Donga's hexagram array also started to take effect. The hexagram array sent 2 baboons into the air the moment it was activated. They screamed pathetically amidst the fiery light. Each hexagram array only lasted for about 10 seconds before it would change locations and rise again. The magical thing was that the baboons' bloodlust state would be lost once they were burned by the fiery light. It was as if they were being cleansed. However, everyone was still under great pressure. There were simply too many baboons in the bloodlust state, attacking ceaselessly. Han Ruoruo's soul power was also being depleted quickly as she kept on using her golden halo. At this moment, Hua Yuhao finally acted. A white halo that was much stronger than before started to spread from his head. The bodies of the baboons were covered by a layer of pale white light as the halo passed them, repressing their auras considerably. The white light from the Eye of Destiny was retracted. In the next moment, a purplish gold light surfaced within it. The purplish gold glow in the Eye of Destiny flashed once before disappearing. Suddenly, the bloody baboon king screamed in horror. It grabbed onto its head and shrieked in pain. Zhong Lashuan exploited this opportunity. Her 6th soul ring suddenly lit up, and it rose into the air before fusing with the full moon. The full moon transformed, its original silvery white color turned dim. Following that, it turned completely black, with a ring-like layer of silver surrounding it. Following this, a silvery halo descended from the sky. Hua Yuhao could feel that it wasn't actually a silver halo, it was just that the light that it contained was black, making it nigh invisible in the darkness. As the black light flashed, it struck the baboon king, who had been hurt by the Eye of Destiny's spiritual shock. The baboon king's body stiffened. Following this, a streak of moonlight shot straight down from the sky and engulfed its body. A frightening explosion occurred, and the baboon king collapsed. Hua Yuhao's spiritual detection lost its detection abilities in that direction. He only saw moonlight crashing down after the black light. After that, he couldn't see clearly. The bloody baboon king had already been blown apart and collapsed to the ground. There was a huge stab wound around 1/2 meter in diameter in the center of the baboon king's chest. Its body had been pierced through. More terrifyingly, its hair had turned silver, and was melting at an alarming speed. What soul skill was this? It was extremely strong. Hua Yuhao suspected that the effect of this strike wouldn't change much even without the aid of his spiritual shock. Zhong Lashuan was extremely strong. At this point, neither Zhong Lashuan nor Han Ruoruo had unleashed their martial soul true bodies. Golden Sky Surge. It was Han Ruoruo's 8th soul skill. At this point, there were around 100 baboons left. They were all sent into the air by Hanruoro's golden sky surge. After this, the bright moon in the sky expanded. Zhong Lushuan's body turned silvery white. The burning white light illuminated her surroundings. In the sky, the bright moon expanded at a terrifyingly quick speed. It reached more than 100 meters instantly, and engulfed all the baboons that had been thrown into the air moonlight. Li Yongyu exclaimed. Following this, everyone from Shrek Academy felt their surroundings turning blurry white. Hua Yuhao's spiritual detection lost its effect underneath this terrifying white light. The gold from the golden sky surge and the silvery white from the moonlight fused together completely. A bright radiance lasted for close to 5 seconds before it faded away. A series of heavy impacts sounded out. When everyone regained their vision, they saw many bloody baboon corpses falling from the sky. No, they should be called silvery white baboons instead. The hair of every baboon had turned silvery white, while their bodies were slowly but steadily melting. Zhong Lushuan had already returned to her normal state. Her expression was calm, as if nothing had happened. This fight didn't seem to have taken much of a toll on her at all. Not a single baboon could move at this point. The surroundings started to turn abnormally quiet. Even the sounds made by birds and bugs ceased to exist. The night turned terrifyingly silent. Wang Chua's pupils shrank. As she looked at Zhong Lushuan, she furrowed her brow. She was considering how far her abilities were from Zhong Lushuan's. This was a Soul Doluor's ability. Zhong Lushuan had turned into a bright moon with the help of Hanruoro's controlling ability as they faced the bloody baboons. As her moonlight was unleashed, all the baboons were defeated. The corpses that Hua Yuhao had prepared using his ice explosion technique were not put to use at all. The fight had already ended before he could pull that move. He had thought that it was going to be a tough fight, but it ended so quickly. After pondering for a moment, Zhong Lushuan replied, "I think it's possible. Although the spiritual power of the Baboon King isn't very outstanding, it uses its spiritual power when it initiates its mass berserk and bloodlust. It isn't easy for your spiritual type martial soul to find a suitable soul ring. If you think that its mass berserk or bloodlust can help you, you can absorb its soul ring. After all, it can enhance your physical strength." Hua Yuhao didn't even think any further. "Give it to me." Indeed, he was very familiar with how difficult it was to find a spiritual type soul ring. He could accept both the effects of mass berserk and bloodlust. Moreover, this Baboon King's cultivation was 50,000 years. He was more than satisfied if his fifth soul ring could be a 50,000-year one. It could also make up for some of his deficiencies in terms of soul skills. In addition, Hua Yuhao had his own plan. After the tournament was over, he had some plans for himself. He still desired to improve his physical strength. Whether it was on the battlefield or exhibiting stronger soul tools, he needed a strong physical body. Just as Hua Yuhao was ready to walk towards the bloody Baboon King, he was stopped by someone. "It doesn't suit you. Give it to me instead." This sudden voice caused great disharmony within the team. He was stunned to find out that it was Wang Chua who was blocking him. Wang Chua wore a cold look on her face as she spoke to Hua Yuhao. After finishing her sentence, she immediately walked towards the bloody Baboon King. Snatching a soul ring? This was a despicable act under any circumstance, but they were even teammates. A golden light flashed. Wang Donga flapped open her radiant butterfly goddess wings in front of Wang Chua and raged, "Do you know what first come first served means? Are we supposed to follow your words just because you said it's not suitable for him?" Neither of them were wearing veils at this point. As they clashed, everyone was in a daze, since they both had the same appearance. Wang Chua said coldly, "Get lost. I've said it. This soul beast doesn't suit him." Wang Donga replied, "Eldest senior sister, Yuhao said he wanted the soul ring first, but she tried to snatch it from him. How despicable can she get? Am I wrong to stop her?" Wang Chua groaned, "I told him that this soul beast doesn't suit him." Wang Donga raged, "Are your words final? Do you know how difficult it is for Yuhao to find soul rings given that he's a spiritual type soul master? He finally found one that's suitable, but you want to snatch it from him? I won't let you." Zhong Lushuan also looked at Wang Chua and asked, "When I asked everyone just now, why didn't you speak up? You only said something after Yuhao made his decision. Explain your actions." Wang Chua replied indifferently, "I've said that this soul ring doesn't suit him. It's still slightly suitable for me. I'm doing this for his own good." Zhong Lushuan replied, "Although you just joined Shrek, your understanding of martial souls should be quite good considering your cultivation. I'm sure you know how rare spiritual type soul beasts are. To find one that fits Hua Yuhao's cultivation is also very difficult. If you can tell me a soul beast that fits him in this forest and point out roughly where it can be located, I'll allow you to absorb this soul ring." Wang Chua turned to Hua Yuhao and asked, "Hua Yuhao, do you trust me? If you do, give me this soul ring. I'll lead the way from now on. It's not my first time entering the forest. If I'm not remember wrongly, I can bring you somewhere to find a suitable soul ring. Otherwise, you can take my life." This video will end here. Thank you for watching.